go to recess? Thank you. Today, the members of the Environmental Advisory Board were appointed by the City Council, and we serve voluntarily. The board's objective is to provide citizen insight to the City Council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting the City of Clearwater. Agendas of today's meeting are on the wall to the entrance to the City Council chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones and electronic devices to ensure a complete record of the board's actions. We ask that anyone speaking today please state your name and spell it for the clerk. Members of the board and staff, please introduce yourselves. To my left.
Marita Litch.
John Thomas.
I'm Micah Maxwell, Chief Innovation Officer.
Nicole Sprague, City Clerk's Office.
Thank you. And I'm Jared Leone, your chairman. Thank you very much. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our previous two meetings. I noticed there were a couple errors on the same error on both of the minutes. In title, I talked to Nicole and she made those changes. With those changes, I'm looking for approval of the minutes from our previous two meetings.
I make a motion to approve.
All right, a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. We'll move on to our next item. Citizens to be heard for items not on the agenda. If there's anyone here to speak on items not on the agenda, please come forward. And state your name and spell it for the clerk. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on any subject that is not on today's agenda. There will be no dialogue between people speaking from the podium and the board members until the speaker has completed their comments. Thank you very much, please.
Hi, my name is Wayne Carruthers and I'm a citizen here of Clearwater. And what brings me here today was there was an article in the Tampa Times paper Sunday, and it was about the cemetery there on Cleveland Street in Missouri. And I know by now we're all pretty much familiar with it. I grew up right there all my life. I lived 2 blocks away on Frederica, and I know that area real well. When we were kids, we played sandlot on that lot before it became a Montgomery Wards. And then we used to invite our friends over from around Jack Russell Stadium to play ball with us, and they used to tell us back then how that was a haunted cemetery, and it was just just a ha-ha. But when I got into high school here at Clearwater, it was still the same joke. And then when I came home from the Army, we would sit over there and have a few beers at Post 7, and it was still, just something people would bring up. But now we fast forward, and here we are, 2024, and we know what's going on there. there's human remains that weren't accounted for. They're still there. And so what brings me here today, I don't know the Crumbs, but from what I've read, they're good people. They bought that property in good faith. They even got in writing from the city that it was clear of all remains. So here we are today, and if you read that article, the Crumbs are upset because they think the city is dragging their feet. And so do I. So as a concerned citizen, I don't know if this is the proper board, so maybe I don't mean to use you, but I'm hoping that somebody will hear this and higher up, they'll start saying, hey, he's got a point there because the city doesn't need this. We don't need this. This is a black eye, and the whole world is watching. This is an issue today that everybody is paying attention to, so we're on the front burner. Our leaders here need to get on the front burner and put some closure to this. So that's what brings me here today, and I hope they hear it. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for coming out, Wayne.
Yes, sir.
Micah, do you have any update on how that is changing the land there? Is it being...
Yeah, so we did receive the letter from the Crumbs. The city manager is currently organizing a meeting with both the members of the community and city staff to talk a little further about it, to try to figure out the best path forward. So there should be more to come in the next month or so.
I know regionally this is something that's happening in other communities as well. Do we know if the timeline is the same or different for Clearwater as it is for Tampa and Hillsborough County?
All of these timelines are a little different because of the different elements to the state law and the different situations. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, can I add something?
Please, Wayne.
Thank you for your time. I heard what you said, and the city's response, is that because of Sunday's paper article, or is that something that was in the works before Sunday?
We've been working with the community for several months.
Yeah, is there documentation of that? Because, if you listen to the Crumbs, and you listen to other people too, like the North Greenwood community people, they're all upset too that the city is dragging their feet. And I don't know why. I think the longer the city drags their feet on this, the more it's going to cost them.
Okay.
Like anything else.
Thank you, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Question
Thank
for
you.
Micah.
Yeah.
Micah, does the city review a title report regarding the property that may have been provided to the Crumbs when they bought the property that, it did have or did not have a cemetery, a historic cemetery on
I'm
it?
not familiar with anything necessarily in the title. We have in the past several years, starting in, I believe it was 2020, done several GPR reports on both of the cemetery sites. But I don't know if on that title piece I would have to check.
Yeah, it would seem that, if someone's buying a piece of property, you want to have, clear title to it, and that's why we have title insurance companies and people buy title insurance. I'd love to see the report and see if that was something that was overlooked and what the answer, how those questions were answered by whoever issued the title report.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak to items not on the agenda? Please come forward and state your name. Thank you.
Hello, Brian Beckman. As you know, each meeting I try to provide an update on where the solar installations for the city stand. So just to highlight some information I sent you earlier today, for Q2 of this year, an additional 68 solar permits were pulled here in the city. That reaches over 1,500 installations, assuming that they all follow through with that. And that totals, after that amount of solar is installed, cumulative $3 million a year in annual savings on electricity bills, as well as annually 37 million pounds of CO2 that's eliminated of not having to have that electricity generated. When you compare that to, for instance, the largest generation facility we have here in the county is the Bartow plant down in St. Petersburg. The amount of solar that's on the rooftops here is equivalent to about 1.5% of what the capacity is of that Bartow plant, just to put that in perspective. That might seem small, and it is a small number in and of itself, but when you extend that across the county, Clearwater is not the only city that has residences and businesses getting solar installed. But the other thing I wanted to highlight, so I talked to one of the people that showed up in the permitting list. I'm always looking for anomalies there, and one of them is a nonprofit in the city, Directions for Living, that they're on Belcher, kind of near Ublena there. They just got their solar installed. It's their second solar installation in the county. And they installed the second one because of the big savings they got with the first one. The first one is at another facility in Largo. And so very apparent in that conversation I had with the director there of how important those savings were to her and for other environmental reasons. But the one other thing I wanted to mention to the board here as well as to the city, one of the things that she didn't realize is available to her, at least as far as I understand the circumstances, is the Inflation Reduction Act to be able to get a 30% rebate on top from the money that they spend. So again, normally in the past, before the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, you couldn't get a tax credit, but you can get a rebate. Just made me think about is there more communication that can be done to the community to let them know that that's available. More information is going to be coming from the government on how you actually execute those things, as you probably know, but that could be useful information to people. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Anyone else, please come forward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Ellen Gordon, Maryellengordon. I'm a resident of 80 Rogers Street, which is Prelude 80 condominiums. My husband is out of town, and I just say that because I want you to know he would also be here and have comments to make if he were here. I'm here to address concerns about the proposed development at 420-432 Bay Avenue, which is the property directly next to ours on the north side. You should have received an email with a letter expressing our concerns and questions, and it will give more details on each of the issues I and others who are here today will raise, and as well there'll be some additional concerns we have that are not environmental related. I'd like to start by saying we're not anti-development. We understand the waterfront lot next to us will be developed. The issue is how it will happen. In its current state, the plan itself does not meet the stated criteria of either the downtown development zone goals for the city, nor the city's Green Print 2.0 environmental goals of resiliency, livability, and green building. Yet no city agency has raised a red flag about these overall failures. Our building is 13 stories. The Oaks ALF to our north is 15 stories. The proposed building is actually 2 buildings at 35 stories each, reaching up to 470 feet. It will extend to just 20 feet from the coastline, which is currently natural and home to seagrasses, marine wildlife, water birds, and includes a protective mangrove area. Not only is there no acknowledgement of these fragile ecosystems in the building plan, the renderings actually show manicured landscaping that goes where the mangroves are. So obviously this is extremely worrisome. It's also proposed that the lot will be elevated and will come within 5 feet of our north property line. There would be nothing to prevent extreme amounts of water runoff to directly entering the bay. There will be a lot of toxic runoff from the construction site, which also has not been addressed in any of the plans. The bluffs area upon which they want to build is alive with underground waterways that include rivers and springs. Deep drilling will be necessary to reach that bedrock, and there is no way that that is not going to disturb and do irreparable damage to all of that underground water and soil. The city's regulations, protocols, and processes have left us literally fearful for the sustainability of the environment surrounding this proposed project. The developers have disregarded neighborhood context, the structural integrity of the soil, water, and ground of the waterfront lot upon which they want to develop, and the fragility of the surrounding ecosystem. Why was this developer not informed from the start that they needed to entirely redraw their plans? Only when they submit their requests for permits will they propose their fixes for the number of issues pointed out by planners, which do not address many of our concerns. That seems egregiously late. I know I'm probably out of time, but I want to thank you and ask if you would stand with us to ask for a delay and reevaluation on this project as it is currently proposed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mary Ellen.
Does anyone need this photo to look at more closely? I can pass it around if you want.
Thank you.
Regarding parcels 420-432 Bay Avenue.
Oh, please state your name first.
I'm good. I am Sarah Brown Caudell,
Thank you.
77-year-old Clearwater native, 80 Rogers Street, Prelude 80 condo. I have seen natural Clearwater coastline, grass beds, fish, and water quality in Clearwater Bay gradually disappear during my life. I have even seen grass beds replanted around the shoreline of the cove due to them dying off from dredging in the past or bridge building. It took a long time for the cove and grass beds to recover and keep the natural beauty that is there today. I would hate to see the grass beds that we have now destroyed. The parcel of land borders the last natural cove along Clearwater's waterfront that we have left. Do you really want to see it destroyed? This property has no seawall and has only riprap along an uneven shoreline. Some would like to dredge this, square it off, and put in a seawall. Don't forget, too, that there are precious mangroves along that shoreline, and I'm hoping you all would want to see them protected and not decimated. Prelude 80 residents are against any dredging around or near that shoreline. That cove and shoreline has been a natural all of my life and has a huge wildlife population. We had manatees that love to munch on the grassy bottom and frolic in the cove, uninterrupted by power boats. The dolphin help their babies in that cove to fish, dive, and jump. The assortment of bird life is unbelievable there. There are roseate spoonbills, large stork, egrets, herons, ospreys, eagles, and yes, even an otter or two. In the winter, when it's cold up north, that cove gets hundreds of Chesapeake Bay ducks that come there while migrating. They're all eating the small creatures from the bottom or grabbing a fish. It's not only a fabulous fishing location for mammals, birds, and wildlife, but for people too. Do you really want to mess up the last natural spot along the waterfront that Clearwater has left? Clearwater has always had underground springs all along the coastline and bluff areas and in the cove itself. This project could interrupt those springs and cause damage to adjoining properties. The driving of pilings way down into the bedrock could hurt not only the springs, but could cause ground problems with hillslides, possible sinkhole, and underground water problems to surrounding properties, buildings, or streets. Does Clearwater really want to chance that around this natural cove and the historical Harbor Oaks area? I urge all of you to please go out, view, and walk this entire parcel at 42432 Bay Avenue. The cove, the natural shoreline, mangroves, and while there, look at the drainage blueprints planned for that property and how the drainage and rainfall runoff will be from Bay Avenue down a steep driveway into the cove, bay, adjoining property, and surrounding narrow streets. Not good. Thank you for your time and giving me a chance to try and save Clearwater's last natural spot, the waterfront cove.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West. This seems like it's the day to talk about development. I was in this room yesterday for the Community Development Board. There were two items on the agenda there relative to pools being built seaward of the coastal construction line. And listening to the discussion, I believe that our code does not specifically deal when they would vary and allow such a construction and when it's inappropriate. It depends on the general acceptance criteria, which are more neighborhood-based, which is very important, but the coastal construction line is more for an environmental-based. And so I think that's an appropriate thing for this board to possibly look at. The other thing, I am familiar with the project that you've just had a couple people talk about, and that property is unique in that it has, I think it's a CSA line, which is a line that goes through it. It divides the property between the higher elevation and the lower elevation. And in the lower elevation, the code limits the density of the property to 70 units per acre. The higher one is 75, plus there is a amenity density bonus that's applicable. The way I read the code, I don't think that would be applicable to the building that is closest to the water, but they're planning on both buildings being the same height. So I think there's a question at that level. I've talked to the planning department about that. They say that there's a averaging that can be applied if there's two zoning districts, but it's not a zoning district, it's an environmental restriction on the property. So I share that. The only other thing, since I have 40 seconds left, I will hope that you will continue to be supportive of the vegetation and the renovation of the medians on Gulf to Bay Boulevard. We used to have really nice plantings in that area, and they've been allowed to really go downhill. The Parks Department is in the process of renovating them, but they're not going to be renovating them to the quality that I think the rest of us would like to see on that entrance to our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill. Anyone else like to speak to an item not on the agenda? Micah, in response to the people who spoke, come forward, yeah.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Dennis. I live at Prelude 80 at 80 Rogers Street. I am the president of the Prelude 80 Homeowners Association, and we have a lot of our residents here that are quite upset with what's going on and not being informed of it. We have a very beautiful area there, as Sarah Caudell was saying earlier, lots of wildlife, seagrass. We see numerous things swim by every day. I saw 2 otters the other day, and it's the first time I've ever seen those. As Mary Ellen was explaining to you, there is going to be a lot of runoff. We're also worried of not only going into the bay, but also coming over into our property and affecting our building, our foundation. So these are all things that we're concerned about and that we would hope that the Environmental Board would take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Micah, yeah, anyone else like to come speak about anything not on the agenda today? Please come forward. Micah, and in response to audience concerns about the project next door, is there any information that you can provide us?
No, I did forward it to the email that we received to the Planning and Development Department yesterday to try to get some better understanding of what their perspective was on it. I have not received anything yet, so as soon as we get something there, I can email it at the very least to you, to each of you individually, just so you're aware of kind of...
Yeah, I think some of the concerns were a lack of environmental impact study, things like that. Are those things that would be addressed normally, or are those...
I don't know.
Okay.
It changes by development. Some developments based on size and scope would require those sorts of things. I think that the as it relates to the Environmental Advisory Board, because there isn't really a regulatory function related to this, there isn't a lot the board could do for this specific issue. However, as we move into our conversation about, the changes to the land development code, the change comp plan we discussed at the last meeting, as I mentioned then, we'll be having land development code changes come before you all as well at some point here. So that we may be able to add some additional protections if we determine that, some need to exist. But I'm not sure what those are at the moment.
Okay. Does anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
During my tenure on the Environmental Advisory Board, we have advocated for some more strict environmental review as part of the development process for projects. And so look forward to seeing those kind of provisions included. And I know we actually had made some suggestions several years ago, just regarding these same type of issues that are being brought up here tonight. But again, to reinforce, we're advisory, we don't have a regulatory function, and without the benefit of detailed plans coming to us and environmental studies, we really don't have any advice to provide regarding these issues that have been raised. Not to say that they're not very significant as well.
So my concern is timing. We only meet quarterly, and we're in an information gathering phase right now. And is all of this going to proceed before we really get a chance to offer any advisory input on it?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately, I certainly understand the concern. I can provide each of you whatever the responses are from planning and development. Because there's not really a regulatory function, I don't know that there's anything that the board can necessarily do. Certainly you can individually advocate for or against it. Certainly you could express an opinion as a board, but I don't, without, as you said, an additional meeting, I don't know that you could do it as a group.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
Could I ask where it is in the process?
Yeah.
Where is this project in the process? Like, has it been,
It just went to the DRC is, I believe, where it is. I just got it yesterday as well.
So that would be fairly early on in the...
Yeah.
it just went to the DRC?
They had their review meetings 2 weeks ago, which we all attended.
Okay.
Where we got a lot of this information, and we saw the things that, I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to be speaking, is that okay?
Come forward if you're going to speak, yes.
Yeah, they,
Just wait till you get to the microphone. Thanks.
They had their review meeting a couple of weeks ago, which we attended, and that was where we found out where they were in the process. This was the first that we knew about it. It was also the first that we learned that that piece of land next to us had been rezoned to be part of the downtown development district in 2018. Our building was never notified. People who have lived there for a long time and keep track of these things were never notified. When we asked at the meeting why we wouldn't have been notified, they said because it wouldn't affect our property, even though we're right next to it. So we had concerns about that. I will say, obviously the city planning is doing their job in terms of going through this and making their comments, but a lot of the comments are very sort of line item, and there's none of that looking at the overall philosophy of whether or not people are adhering to what has already been, to me, painted out in many of the city guidelines. The downtown development review, there are things that they absolutely are not adhering to, not just environmental, but neighborhood context, that sort of thing, traffic concerns. So outside of your purview, so I guess we're just confused as to who ultimately owns this. If you've got separate engineers at city planning giving their input, I literally had one of them tell me that thinking about this project gives her anxiety. And because she's just reporting. And then they come back, and I guess, does it really ever get turned down at that point, once they're applying for permits? So I know that's the sort of concerns that we had, and we don't really see who's like the one person or agency that's overseeing from the start that they're adhering to all of the things that are in city guidelines that we can see pretty clearly just as, citizens.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So there are no exemptions in this, so this project's not going before the community development board?
No, and it doesn't go before city council,
Level 1, or?
which we also didn't understand why. It doesn't go before city council or the citizen review board, I guess is the other group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that it wasn't going to CDP, but we could,
We were told that it's not going, but when we went to the city planning meeting, right, guys?
Okay.
Not going because it's an FLS, not an FLD, something like that,
Right.
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, Micah, can you find out what the timeline, because I believe that DRC is a very early phase of a project that a lot of times what is seen at that step might not come to fruition later on. I'm just, and so we can just kind of get an idea of if this is something that we can kind of wrap around and put a letter of support, or just hear more information, because it sounds like it's very early on that there isn't any sort of study or environmental information known one way or the other, that if we had a presentation on it at this point, we wouldn't have much information. And I think that we wouldn't be able to move forward with anything without something, like John said, that indicates what those issues would be moving forward with a project of this size and scope. So not to say that we can't be supportive of what you brought forward to us today, we just need to find out more information, and I think we're in the same kind of boat that you are in, except with a little bit less information than you all have had. So I think we'll move forward with whatever we can find from Micah in terms of answers to the questions that you raised that we forwarded on, and we can forward that information to you all, and in an upcoming meeting we can figure out if this is something that we can support, or kind of help you all in some way, try to figure out where the next step is for you all to deal with things too.
Can I ask one more question? Has there been an environmental impact study in any project? Was there an environmental impact study for the Coachman Park project, for instance?
I believe they did have an environmental impact study for Coachman Park. I would have to kind of go back and,
Because I'd like
I
to
wasn't
know
on that project anymore at that.
What grounds, would indicate that being done? What would be the conditions for that? Because I'm not familiar with that being done for.
We can bring forward that and review it with the board, show you the parameters for, what would trigger something like that.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
We can note.
Yeah, Marina.
And I would like to say thank you to all of you for bringing this to our attention. It's not the first time that I've been involved or been made aware of situations where development is planned before the citizens in the neighborhood have any idea of what's going on. And it is very frustrating. And I appreciate your frustration, and I appreciate your activity and your action in bringing it towards us. And hopefully once we get more information about it and see what the status of it is and what we might frame as an advisory comment to the powers that be, that would be helpful, hopefully.
Please state your name.
My name's Cheryl O'Brien. I have a condominium at Prelude 80. Former City of Minneapolis Community Development. I was one of the people that led all the major developments in that city. So this is not my first rodeo. It may have been mentioned earlier. I was in another board meeting, so I'm sorry for my tardiness, but are you going to be reviewing all of the issues of light? The lighting levels in the area, as it impacts the environment and wildlife and such? Question there.
We usually don't review those. If it was brought to us, we would review it at that time and see what.
Typically on a large-scale environmental study, that would be included.
Mm-hmm.
It is, at least on the very large cities like Minneapolis, we always had to include it. Who is, and this may be more a question to you, but who's going to be dealing with the environmental impact of the fact that there's going to need to be police, fire, emergency, et cetera, that are going to have to get to this property line, and the streets are already quite narrow. And since they only have a density of, I believe, one parking spot on their site per condominium complex, that means everybody else is going to be parking on the streets. And they're already narrow streets.
Yeah, Micah?
Typically, that's reviewed during the
Yeah.
DRC with our internal departments.
Correct.
I don't know what the.
Yeah, but it's just from an environmental standpoint of roads have to be made wider, then trees come down, all of those sorts of things.
Right.
So then that becomes your area, where if they start taking trees down because the roads have to be made wider,
Right.
et cetera, to fit fire trucks. And then the other thing is, just talking to the fire marshal, the fire trucks that the city has right now will not service a building of these magnitude, especially two of them. So they're bigger as well. So, as you look at that and the impact of that, that's another issue. So, and in follow-up, we absolutely want to know who is the individual that all of this goes up to organizationally, because we want to talk to that person.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I believe, like you said, in the DRC, there is multi-level reviews by various departments that address a lot of these issues.
And we've, in fact, during my time in solid waste, we dealt with a lot of those as well. Same sort of truck size issues and road width and turnarounds, those sorts of things. So definitely looked at. I'll have to review where they're at in the process.
Yeah, and like I said, we're kind of behind you all educationally and informationally about this project. So we'll learn more, and when we do, we'll let you all know what we find out, and if there's something that we can do, we'll do it. So if there's anything else, we'll move on to our next item. If that's all right. Our new business, it's 4.1 EAB staff alignment. Micah?
Sure. Did you want to do the introduction of?
Oh, yeah, we'll do that as well. We have a new sustainability coordinator. Cassie, come on down. Please introduce yourself. You came on a day where we have a really nice crowd to meet you.
Hi, my name's Cassie Cordova. I'm the new Sustainability Division Manager here at Clearwater. I'm actually from the area originally, and I left, and I'm back. So any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome back. What are you looking forward to doing as you get yourself kind of situated in your role here with the city?
Well, I'm really excited about Green Print 2.0 and getting into that. It's literally like my third day, so
Okay.
I'm learning all sorts of, just logistics of the city. So having dived right into all that, but I have reviewed it, and I think there's a lot of exciting projects.
All right. Any other comment from the
Can
board?
you tell us just a little bit about your background?
Yes, I don't know if you remember me, but we actually worked together on a Surfrider initiative a few years ago. We went around to restaurants together.
Oh, yes.
Recognize
you
your
look
name.
familiar.
So, like I said, I'm from the area. I grew up in Pinellas and Pasco. I went to the University of Florida for my undergrad.
Go
and
Gators.
then go Gators. Then I moved abroad. I was abroad for about 9 years. Came back to the area and did my graduate, I did a master's in global sustainability at the University of South Florida. I left to go to Virginia, where I was the environmental sustainability coordinator of James City County for the last 3 years. And now I'm back here.
Great.
Welcome.
Awesome, welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to see you again.
Cassie, what's your last name?
Cordova,
Just the way it's
formerly McCabe. C-O-R.
Cassie, would you characterize your expertise more in the energy area or environmental justice or, the sciences or the softer, more global issues?
So my previous role, I was the energy manager for the county, as well as the sustainability outreach and education coordinator. So I did both.
Okay.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you at our next meetings and subsequent meetings from there. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Micah, the EAB staff alignment?
I'm not sure if everyone has a copy. Mike Knetzel, Chief Innovation Officer. I have up on the screen here, and maybe we can get Nicole's on it. We've talked for the last several meetings about sort of our staff EAB alignment to make sure that we're all on the same page about the types of things we're doing and what we're focused on. Is it not coming up? No.
Oh, was the wrong source?
It's on screen, yeah. Technical difficulties.
All right.
Well, either way,
All right.
we've discussed them at the last several meetings, and we wanted to see if you all had any further comments. I know that Mr. Thomas was not here for a couple of meetings and didn't have a chance to take a look at this previously, and Ms. Wentworth was gone for a couple meetings out of the country, so wanted to see if there were any other further questions or thoughts about the playbook itself.
So I'm sorry, but, oh, okay, now I can pull it up.
No, I was on the.
And at the most recent meeting, since it's not popping up here, Nicole's letting us down, not really. We had as our why to exist, our overall objective to engage in multi-directional conversations with the city council, staff, and citizens about potential environmental impacts of national, regional, and local decisions that have the potential to impact the community. That's where we made a couple adjustments at the last meeting that got us to that point. So that is the overall intended.
I wrestled with, because after looking at that, I had a couple of concerns. There were a couple of, just I guess, the writer in me, a couple of repeat words. I don't like the repeat language in there. I also, I think some of the wording is just too wordy. I feel like, reading our original, and here, our original objective is to provide citizen insight to the city council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting Clearwater, essentially. Oh, are we still off there? I'm sorry?
It's up there too. I just
okay.
wanted to make sure I took some notes here. Didn't
Oh,
miss
okay,
out.
very well. Oh, I apologize. Wear both hats. Well, I feel like it's our stated objective is it's still a little bit, the word choice isn't as, I guess, easy. It's more government-ease. But I think our changes are even more so that, and I think we should really look at being reflective of being welcoming, and I think the way it reads is too wordy. It just, I don't know. I think it is kind of difficult to figure out what it is that we actually do in that objective that way. So I think we're trying to make things clearer and easier for our board and to be recognized for what we're trying to do, and I think that makes it more difficult, and I think that's ultimately where my thoughts are. So I'll open up to John, Glenna. You all still had from.
I didn't really have much on this. Pretty high level, related information, and it's really. I don't know how do we apply these in our ongoing work, but it's.
Yeah, and this one was intended to just be very, very high level, getting a little deeper into the weeds as we go into the lower levels of the document. But happy to make any adjustments that you all would like. If it's too wordy, that's perfectly fine. We can make some adjustments and yeah.
You don't have another copy of it, do you? I just
I don't have one physically with me.
I do agree it is very high level.
Yeah, it's very high level.
And I think that was, something that we.
Do you want to come over here and look?
Sorry?
Do you want to come over here and look? I have it pulled up.
No, I just shared my copy with her.
Oh, okay.
Well, can I make a suggestion and put your copy on the?
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, if we put it right here, everybody can kind of pop.
Beautiful.
It's down to, there's a second page in there too.
Thank you.
I think this is very helpful as we are kind of trying to move forward and look for how our board can better serve the city and the residents. So, we got.
I should have downloaded this. Thanks.
All right.
I'll give it back to you.
One more turn. Nope, yeah.
Two pages.
You're almost there.
All right.
Two pages.
very difficult.
Sorry, come on, put you through that again.
So I want to say, I appreciate the work that you put in on putting this together for us, Micah, and the thought to kind of move our board in a direction like this where we can have more of a rudder. So thank you for that. Marita, do you?
Well, we set a timeline here, and I don't know that we were meeting our timeline that's put out here. In April, did we determine what our significant environmental objectives are? Did we do that?
I think that we were working towards that, and we had some other adjustments based on some of the conversation, and because we hadn't had as much of a chance to review it, during these various meetings. So I mean, the original timeline was really, the staff really, I put those together as a goal. Didn't necessarily mean we had to hit those, but it really kind of depended on how much conversation you all wanted to have about it. As I said when we started this process, we're okay with changing any of this. We just want to make sure we're on the same page with everybody.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is let's start doing some of this stuff.
Sure.
Determine what our environmental objectives are, identify major items and timelines.
Well, I'd like to say that we have, I think some of it is that our timeline is more nimble, so to speak, that we don't say, we want this done within this amount of time. We've said, like last year, we wanted to work toward the city getting a cigarette ban. We didn't know what that timeline was, but we passed that, or had the city pass that in June, and we worked to support that. So that was, I think, a significant environmental objective that we had put together early on that we've achieved, but we didn't know what the timeline would be for that, but that is one.
Right, but I think that organizationally, this has more structure than just the process you described. I think this is laying out an overall vision, then identifying things that we want to do underneath that, and then agreeing on that. Am I on the right page with you?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and I think it's great to approach it that way. I think it's much more organized, much more focused, more likely to get more done that way. So it seems to me like there should be follow-up documents to this. And that would be identifying our significant environmental objectives and the major items, specifically as it's laid out here. And although the timelines are flexible, it's good to have timelines because it keeps you on task. And I think that we should kind of get to that task. Now, having said all that, we can identify objectives, and then we are, things like that came up today, those are also important items that we need to address. So we can build flexibility into that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm on board with this. And if you have some edits to the verbiage that you think would make it more concise, that's an easy fix.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess I just looked at and how it was, and I was trying. It seems like a different wording of what we're already doing, and just a more. That's all. I hadn't really. I tried to come up with some other, but I just kept kind of falling back to where we.
So, okay, so before we start doing the steps that are outlined in this, are you just looking for our unified approval of this as it stands here?
Yeah, really just to, and really those first four, right, as we determine that those are in fact what we think are important, that'll help us really, lock down some of the timelines on the items under what is the most important thing right now. And of course, when we get to the near-term items as well, we've been trying to make sure that we're staying ahead of those things that we know are coming, and that we know you all care about that are in these things. But because we haven't finished this yet, we may not have a final scheduled document, but we're trying to have an active live document and update you at every meeting on what we're adding for those next few meetings, so that you can kind of see what's coming.
So what do you need from us at this point?
Really just if there is some consensus on these, probably just a motion that these are what you want to do.
I move that this is what we want to do.
I'll second. Approve this plan as written.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. I just had my only concerns about changing what our objective is. Like I said, if we can figure out a way to have it similar, but kind of cut our repeat language in here, I will be okay. But, potential and impact in there twice is kind of, just from the writer in me, like I said, is want to try to
So you're talking
provide
about,
something
you're
that's
talking about
consistent.
the sentence that starts with to engage in multi-directional conversations,
Mhm.
that,
Yeah, that's change. That's a change from our objective, which is to provide citizen insight to the city council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting Clearwater. That's what by ordinance our board has created as an objective. So to change it here, we'll have to go through city council to have them change it by ordinance for our board to make up our
Okay.
board too.
There's a couple of points. I've asked a lot of times if we could see this objectives. I've never seen it. I've only heard you read it. And I don't know
Micah sent it to
Yeah, no,
Oh, a long time ago, forgive me.
the original one was what is in the code, the
Yeah.
one that
Yeah.
the chairman just read.
That's right, you did.
It is certainly, I think it makes sense if we get to one that we really think is the right one,
Yeah.
to recommend a change to the ordinance. That probably makes a lot of sense. And, if we're not ready for that piece, that's okay. I think the concepts, assuming that we all agree on the concepts here, we can kind of move
Yeah.
forward and try to
Yeah, and I
define
think from a-
further the objective, if you'd like. It's really, kind of up to you all.
How long have we been looking at this document?
I'm sorry?
How long have we been looking at this document?
I believe that the first time we looked at it was in March or April? March. Yeah, it was March.
Yeah, I think this is our third meeting looking at and moving this forward. I agree with everything else on here. The wording for our objective, and I think it's very similar, how it currently reads and the presentation of I'm just not a big fan of how it reads, so.
So do you want to make edits to what is there?
Yeah, yes, I do. Again, a lot of it, when I come back, it's similar to how it currently is stated. I just don't see how substantially different they are, and maybe that's just my perspective.
Do you want to
for
go
reading
back
them,
to the
so.
original one?
I don't think it's perfect either, but I think it's a lot easier in terms of for a wider distribution and understanding.
Well, we have such limited time to accomplish anything. I think it would be good if we could get something resolved today about that, so we don't keep spinning our wheels on the verbiage of our objective.
Yeah.
And I believe we should be, it doesn't matter about being unanimous. So let's decide on something so then we can move on to the other important work that we need to do.
Okay. Well, I would move to keep it how existing, how it is then, and the document is as it exists, but with our objective.
Do you mind reading it, the original again?
Yeah. The objective is to provide citizen insight to the city council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting Clearwater. To engage in multi-directional conversations with the city council, staff, and citizens about potential environmental impacts of national, regional, and local decisions that have the potential to impact the community.
Just to note something, either way you say that, I think what we learned today, there's a big gap if that's what our role is, because there is no provision for environmental impact studies that relate back to how the community is affected by land use, operational matters of existing facilities and infrastructure projects. There really is not a detailed process available, in the city code. And I think as we work through potentially participating in the process to, rewrite some of those sections or add some new provisions, I know I advocated and worked in an environment where there was a very rigorous environmental study and review process in my professional practice, and New England. And, it's a little different here. And even when we do raise issues, they don't really gain much traction because there's no process for that review
And our
and
ultimate goal
engagement.
is to make sure that the time you're volunteering on the board and, our time together is valuable to both of us, right? I mean, that we're, we've got a board that really can affect change on the things that you want to affect change on. So whatever we can do to make that happen, we're in.
So we do have a motion and a second. Like I said, I would be open to amending, or like to, if we could, keep the objective, our current objective, and the rest of the document as it is. I think it's great. I think we did a lot of work. I think we've done a lot of discussion on it. I think, Marita, you're right. We need to move forward past this. And
I'll make a motion that we insert
Can I ask one more question
President.
before you do that? Before you make one more question before you make a motion?
Yeah.
Micah, when you drew this up, what does this objective add to the existing objective?
Oh, boy, I don't have a red line in front of me on it. Let me try to compare them here.
To me, a lot of stuff is implied in the old objective that's spelled out here. Like, here we have national, regional, and local decisions, and this just says affecting Clearwater.
Also, the word potential is in here twice, which is, has some kind of redundant sense. But it also talks about being proactive instead of just reactive. Being, looking forward and anticipating, also with trends that impact our community environmentally.
yeah, I think, like Marita said, a lot of that is more or less implied in the current objective, and this was trying to, I guess, spell out a lot more of those aspects, because I think our board already is proactive, even though it doesn't say that in here specifically to be proactive. But if those are things that, if there are things that are impacting the city, that falls within being proactive or reactive. So that's why sometimes saying less is more. And that's why I wasn't so sure after reading this. And then when I noticed there were a couple of, double potential and impact in there twice, I thought maybe there's something that we can look at honing in on that. So.
But if you don't include it, not everybody implies the same thing. If it's written, it's cleared out, and it's clear and everybody sees the same thing. If it's implied, not everybody sees the same thing, and you can't use it for a backup for anything.
Well, procedurally, we would need to have the city council improve basically update or revise our charter with this new language.
Yeah.
So why don't we operate under our current, and then at some time that this is reworded perhaps, and it goes to the city council, gets revised in terms of how this board was established. Then it gets put back in here for further clarity. But we just continue to operate as we are, based on the provisions that create the Environmental Advisory Board today. We can't change those.
Yeah, and I think, and I agree, interpretation. I think having a wider interpretation is more helpful than having a more narrow interpretation, just in general, because I think that leaves us open to more opportunity and more option to be helpful and to serve and affect change by having a more interpretive mission. So those are my thoughts. Oh, yeah, please come forward.
I don't have the two in front of me, but just based on what you said, is there a way to maybe merge the two? Because I think there was some key words in the new one, like the multi-directional and talking about the regional and the state. Maybe it could just be added to the original one, but I do agree that that last part of the new one, really those last 6 words, I think, could just be eliminated, because you already talk about potential impact and then you say potential impact. So perhaps just taking some of the keywords out of the new one and inserting it into the old one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would help further define what we're trying to do. I agree. Just trying to figure out what those exact words would be. And,
Well, we can certainly take a stab at it in the next, we have another meeting in October. We'll take a stab at making some adjustments and see if we can wordsmith it if that's what you'd like.
If we did that, then, it sounds like we're really in the process of reevaluating our objective to some degree, like what this, our board would like to do. And so would we then bring that new objective to council and ask for a charter change for the group?
Yeah, we'd have to if we were going to make changes to it. Yeah. And I think essentially they're very similar. We're just trying to further define what it is that we're doing, and that's what we've been trying to do with this process since since we've been working on this realignment and trying to move forward in a new department with a new purview and trying to help define what that looks like. So, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we insert.
We have a motion on the
We have a motion, yeah.
All right.
And we have
I'd like to amend that motion then, if I may.
Okay.
I'd like to amend the motion to insert the current language and approve the rest of the document as is.
Okay.
Do you accept that friendly amendment, Marita?
I actually liked your,
Oh, there has to be a second.
No, you were the seconder to the original motion.
Right.
I'm sorry, I see what you're saying now.
But I didn't make the,
Yeah.
I think Nicole just needs you to accept the amendment, the requested amendment, right?
Yeah.
So you would just have to agree to accept the second the amended motion.
I have to agree to it? Does Marita agree to it?
does the amendment say we put the old words in this plan?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what it
For the time being.
Oh, for the time being,
For the
okay.
time being, until we can get the new words approved by council.
Okay, I didn't hear that part.
Well, that's
didn't
not,
hear that
that
part
wasn't
either.
part, well.
All right. So that's what the amended
The
motion
amendment
is.
is just an amendment.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right. So
Not
do you accept
the
that, Marita?
background
Okay.
of why. I
Marita
thought
accepts
that
the-
was inferred and everybody would understand that
Do you
from prior
accept it,
discussion.
Donna? Marita said she did. Marita?
Yes. I accept that.
All right, great.
Do we vote on that now?
Yeah, now that's what our vote will be on that motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, any opposed? No? All right, well then we approve. We have approved our new mission alignment, and we'll see, I guess, at our next meeting in October. Like you said, we'll have maybe get together, do some writing, some editing, and have something that, if we need to change, and then we can send that forward to City Council. Now, before we move on, I think we do have to open up the discussion to anyone here in the audience. If they have any comments, to please step forward and state their name. And if not, then we'll move on to the next item. Our 4.2, review of the first year of energy savings with Synergistic.
Yeah, Melody's going to provide us some background on what's occurred, and I know that the PowerPoint's not going to work, so you won't be able to see the information unless you have it with you. But maybe it'll work. Nope. But take it away, Melody.
Thank you very much.
I hope you're having a great day, all board members. My name is Melody, and I'm the Sustainability Specialist. So we've had the Energy Conservation Program with consulting firm Synergistics for a year now, and last month, Synergistics came to present at Council the one-year performance review. I wish you have the graphs in front of you, but I'll do my best to showcase to you what we have achieved through the program. So background information for the program, so to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to meet the goals in Green Print 2.0, the city decided to commit to increased energy efficiency by partnering with Synergistic to reduce electricity, natural gas, water, usage in city facilities by 20% over 5 years. The program started in March 2022, last year, and we've set the baseline year as March 2019 to February 2020 to avoid the pandemic period. And so through the program, Synergy 6 has been working very closely with city departments in aligning the HVAC usage against our facilities occupancy timings. And then they've also worked to adjust temperature set points according to a new city policy that we have set forth through the program for energy conservation. Overall, it's also a behavior change program where Synergistic work really closely to just monitor the changes for the AC system, thermostats, and also encourage conscientious behaviors in energy savings and electricity consumption. And as 1 year has passed, in terms of electricity consumption, we've seen 9% reduction over the last year compared to the baseline year. And during the summer month of June to September last year, there was a 13% reduction. So that's when we really saw some good change. And then for the natural gas data, there was a reduction of 27% in the first year. Just to go back on electricity, so there was a graph that shows the overall blended unit cost for electricity that actually went up by 23% in cost compared to the baseline year. And is roughly at the price of 0.11 to 0.12 dollars per kilowatt. And then so in general, we also have a graph that reflects the total electricity spent for the meters in the program. And the cost increased right around the time that we noticed that our unit costs increase as well. It actually illustrates that the energy the city is saving now is more valuable than before. And the total money saved in year one has a sum of $450,000, $450,113, and that's just purely electricity and natural gas savings. Yeah, and so as an illustration, if we bottle up the electricity and natural gas saved, it will power the main library, this building that we're in, for 2 years off the grid. Let's see if I missed anything. Yeah, and also as an illustration, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions reduced through the 1 year, it could power 275 homes. It could also mean that we've reduced 5 million miles, vehicle miles driven by an average vehicle. It would also mean be equivalent to 36,000 trees planted and grown for 10 years. And also 757 tons of waste recycled, just for illustrative purposes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Melody, thank you for presenting this information. I saw the presentation, I guess it was about a month or so ago, and I thought the savings, it was great information. I'm curious, after this, where else do we see potential savings? Just retrofitting things or adding in new infrastructure and what that looks like?
There was some proposal brought forth by Synergistic to increase or rather upgrade certain equipments in some of the facilities that we have, and we're in this discussion with General Services to see how that would work out. And that includes, it's just as an example, adding mini split systems in certain levels of a building, and then also just making sure that some of our supposed automated HVAC system is working properly, and that would require some technicians to come look at and run a study and do upgrades if necessary.
And one last question from myself. Using this savings and moving forward with more savings, or the exponential savings from this, is there a discussion, or how can we move forward with a green fund? I think our board's brought that up in the past, and other members of the community have too. Is there something that this will help move that idea forward? How can we help with that too? So thank you.
Yeah, I think part of this, we do want to build into the next couple meetings, and I think we have it set up for maybe the next meeting, the October meeting, to talk about the Green Fund. Okay. It's difficult right now because of the spike in the rates. It's not necessarily dollar savings to the city, rather cost avoidance. Mm-hmm. We did not have to allocate more dollars to these things. Hopefully at some point we'll get to the part where we're saving some money on it, but we could certainly reallocate that cost of those dollars cost avoided. We would still have to increase the budget for the city, though. But we do want to talk about that. I think we have it scheduled for the next meeting, and
great, thank you. Okay,
and
anyone else?
We're going to try to bring in the budget office as well, so they're involved in some of these conversations.
Excellent, thank you. All right, anyone else?
I do. I have two things. I was afraid that you were going to say this is cost avoidance and not actual savings. I was afraid that would be the approach of the city. I wish it were different. Synergistic projected savings for the city. What have they accomplished in relation to their projection?
Yeah, they did not achieve them at this point. They have not been able to hit the number that they originally proposed. So when we originally entered into the agreement or discussed an agreement with Synergistic, it was a 50-50 split. And the city council at that time decided that they did not want to move forward, and the mayor had suggested an alternative approach, which basically ensured that they didn't split the savings with us, but they also did not, we could not lose money on any year of this program. So the cost that the city pays to Synergistic and to the software company is guaranteed by Synergistic. So if we don't save enough money to offset that, then we get money back from Synergistic, or we can, if they choose not to pay that money, we can end the contract with them. There is an element here that we're still working through with them that really relates to water. Water is not part of what you've seen here. So that you see the $470,000, that isn't inclusive of all of the savings that the city received. It's only inclusive of the gas and the electricity savings. When we finalize the water element, and there's some complications to it that are billing related, we want to make sure those are correct before we bring them forward, then we will be able to identify whether or not they owe us any money or not. We're hopeful that they will not. There are a number of areas that we can see further improvement in year two. Some of them are, areas that we just didn't focus on as much, or they didn't focus on as much in the first year. Fire, some of the police areas, because they approached it from the low-hanging fruit first. We also have a number of areas where the contract doesn't require technological upgrades, but the reality is, if we want to achieve the highest level of savings, it probably makes sense to do some of them. And the ones that I'm talking about aren't necessarily like the mini splits, but simpler things like AC thermostats that can lock people out, or that can be monitored more remotely, so that you know exactly when when somebody's attempted to drop the temp, or they just simply cannot adjust the temperature. There are a number of spaces in the city that do not have those upgraded and are just more, manual change items. And as we could have 1,000 energy managers, and they can't be everywhere at one time, right? So they'll adjust it back up to where it is. Somebody could come in right behind them and adjust it back down. So we're going through the process now, building maintenances, in making that adjustment, and that will help us. It's a low cost to us. It's probably ultimately about $10,000. It's nothing, and I think there's probably a lot of savings we can achieve from that, and so does synergistic. So that's one area where we could see a big bump for the next year. And then, like I said, tackling some of those other areas like fire and PD, and both groups have been very positive about that. Both fire and PD have been very positive to some of the changes we're bringing forward. So that seems to be going pretty well.
That sounds good. One last question. You referenced some policy changes. Policies, is that the right word? Policies that people have to follow. Yeah. Can you give an example of what one of those is?
So it was a energy conservation policy for all city staff, and within that document there were certain recommended set points for different seasons, and there's some, I believe, reminders too on, like good behaviors in terms of like shutting off your workstation when you're going on vacation, and other appliances as well. We do have created a one-pager information sheet as well off of that policy to send it to all city departments and staff members for distribution and just awareness about the policy. Yeah. I'm able to share that with you as well after this
That'd be great.
document.
Yeah, I'm just wondering that just telling people about this has actually affected change, not using an approach
It's
of...
actually the set point required by Synergistic as part of our contract. They required us to put into place this policy that identified you have to be within this range by city policy, which gives them the ability to come in there and alter it up or down. There's some exceptions to it when we're having large events, different scenarios, but by and large, that's the city manager signed off policy that all employees must keep their spaces to this temperature. And we can provide that just so you all can take a look at it. We'll email it to you.
Sure.
Very good.
Is that a big culture shift for the city? Is it?
Yeah, it's what it's, all of this is intended to be sort of the culture shift of we're going to, we're going to operate a little differently on, whether or not we have refrigerators in every space, or, the set points are at 78 or 68, those sorts of things.
The AC wars, yeah.
All right.
And
Any other comments?
Really, as it relates to equipment upgrades like, new air conditioners, those sorts of things, Synergistic makes recommendations. That's not something they necessarily get credit for. They'll adjust the base year based on whatever that new unit is, because they're not necessarily providing us the savings. The higher SEER rating is. So that is sort of an active thing that we work through with them on a normal basis.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the board? John?
I know there's a lot of focus from people on the dollars and the cents saved, but I think there's the green side of the ledger, all the things that you pointed out, the achievements that will be realized year after year. And I think the city should be commended for, structuring the kind of arrangement with Synergistic that Mike outlined, that there really won't be, it's risk-free. And the wins that you summarized in the beginning, fantastic. Great job.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Or from the board? Sorry. No? Okay, I'll open it up to any comments from the audience. Please step forward and state your name for the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody, for presenting that. Brian Beckman. It is exciting to see that happen, so thank you so much for continuing to be a force behind that. The one thing that John just made me think of is the context of the goal that the city has set for clean energy goals for city operations. You're getting there through basically three means, through energy efficiencies is one avenue. The second avenue is installing your own renewable energy, i.e. solar. And then the third is purchasing the remaining that you can achieve through those first two and have that be renewable energy source, just like we've signed up for Clean Energy Connection. And so back to the part that Melody was just presenting there, do you have, how would that rate in the percentage of achieving the goal that you have as the, I forget the first near-term goal, if it was 2030 or 2035. How is that helping achieve that goal on a percentage basis? When you, I think you had some of that in some of your other documentation, so I was just curious if you could talk about
I believe that the 5%, it was the intended number was 5%, that we would eventually reduce by year 5 at the very least, be able to have reduced city energy usage by 5%. So it was about 5% of that total usage. We're behind that. We anticipated being a little ahead of where we're at currently, but it's about 5% if I remember correctly, and I'll try to pull that document up that lists that out. I think Mr. Beckman is correct. We do have a document that outlines that. 90% sure it's 5%. Like I said, we're a little behind on it, so we need to do some catch up on it.
I thought there was 9% reduction in electricity anyway. So when you're talking about energy usage, you're talking not just about electricity and natural gas, or?
Yeah, I'm just talking about the overall usage, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of electricity.
Of electricity.
Yes.
All right. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from the audience? Thank you, Brian. We'll move on to our next item then. 4.3, review of solar implementation plan.
Right on cue. This was also presented to City Council at that same meeting that we discussed synergistic with them. This is basically our plan. I'm not going to call it a loose plan because this is what we're intending on doing, but there are pieces that may move between them. We actually have more expense listed in this item than we have revenue currently. Hopefully we can change that at some point, but we expect that some of the estimations will be different than what we're actually able to do based on what is ultimately engineered. And we also anticipate that some of the projects may have some other issues related to whether or not we can install, the items where we'd like to install them. One specific one that I'll get to in a moment is Countryside Recreation. But let me just start with the Fleet building. That is our first facility that we're looking at installing. The study that we did, and actually when we did our solar study, our full solar study, Mr. Beckman identified the IRA. We've included savings related to the IRA, so the cost if we utilize the IRA and if we don't. The original number that we were using was the without the IRA because it didn't exist at that point. But as it came in as an opportunity, we actually had the consultant add that element in. So we have both numbers as far as savings is concerned. But our first building is the Fleet building, and the reason it's our first one is because it's a very large space that we can achieve about 85% savings on. It needs a brand new roof. It's an expensive roof, but it's going to happen one way or another. So the building probably beneficial. It is the home of the building maintenance department who will be running a number of these projects, so they're going to have an opportunity to experience it on their own facility, which is probably good. And they won't have to travel far to maintain them either, so that's a good thing too. The second one that we're looking at doing is Countryside Rec. That one's a little hairier only because there has been some roof leak issues on that facility, even though we did a re-roofing on it in December of, I think it was 21. As of today, I believe they may have identified what the issue is, and hopefully it will not preclude us from putting solar on the roof. It's solar ready, right? We have the piping ready to go. We have brackets that were installed, as part of the installation. But it sounds like we might have found the issue, and hopefully it's not going to preclude anything. So more to come on that. We'll update you as we move forward. So that one was intended to be our second installation. It may flip with what is number 3 on the list, which is our solid waste transfer station. It's a newer building. It does not need a new roof, but it's in a great spot for solar. So it'll be more of a retrofit. So we're going to start down that process after the fleet building, and potentially after Countryside Rec. We'll manage that as we go through. We also have, just skipping down to the line right below, and just so you're aware that the 2 that are here, I've identified a set as general services, which is our fleet and building maintenance group, and then a set as engineering. Engineering's items are really more for the new buildings and those installs that wouldn't really affect existing buildings. Osceola Garage, which is the one that's going to be across from the old City Hall and next to Peace Memorial, is planned to have solar installed on it. The Long Center is an item that, it's a retrofit for the building, but it's so substantial it really required engineering to take on that project. That one we will have some conversation at an upcoming meeting. I do not have a date at this point from engineering, but they're going to be identifying a couple different options related to the natatorium, and whether or not it should exist in its current form or some alternative form. So that will all affect the amount of solar we can place on the Long Center. So we're waiting to have that conversation with engineering and the City Council. And then we have a couple different projects, which I've highlighted in yellow on the documents that we sent out. One is North Greenwood, and the other is Fire Station 46. You may remember Fire Station 46 was intended to have solar, and we budgeted some dollars for solar for it. During the engineering process, the engineers went ahead and identified that we could not install on those facilities because of wind loads and the inability to utilize the peel and stick solar array. We went back and forth with them. Ultimately, it was determined that they would not provide us a signed and sealed document that would allow for this. But we have explored some alternatives, though, and they relate to the North Greenwood Library potentially, Fire Station 46, which we think is a great opportunity, and potentially even the Beach Library and Rec Center. What these look at doing is not installing on the roof, but doing, in essence, carport installs that would cover parking spaces. We have a very large lot, as you probably know, at the Rockaway lot next to Fire Station 46. We have proactively, as that project has ended, and we bring that building online, we added a conduit in from the parking lot to the building so that as we move forward with the parking lot install, we won't have to mess with the envelope of that building or rip up the parking lot that is in between them. That is the driveway, in essence, for the fire station. We're looking at doing something similar at the North Greenwood Library. There are a number of fields adjacent to, sports fields adjacent to that building, and they have a pretty good sized parking lot. Our thought there is, again, we can put the solar in the parking lot to provide shade for those parking in that area, but also potentially along the spectating areas of the fields, so that those that are watching events might be able to get a little shade, might be able to avoid some rain, sort of a dual use. And the same is true again with the beach rec and library. That parking lot, if you're familiar with it, one is on one side. The beach rec and library is on one side, and the pool is on the other side. And there's a long parking lot in between. We're looking at trying to put something in between and figuring out which facility it will power, the pool or the beach and the rec and library. So that is another one that's a little further out. The other two that we have on here, one is the MSB garage. We're actually, at the time that we sent this out, we weren't sure what we were going to be able to do. We're not totally sure yet still, but we may be able to bring the power over to the police station. Our original thought was we won't be able to because of issues related to net metering and not being on the same parcel as the police department. However, it appears that we may be able to provide power to the police station without a net metering agreement, assuming we are generating a lot lower than the building is utilizing, the police department's utilizing. We're still working through some of that. Our alternative to that in both the MSB garage and the Garden Avenue garage relates to EV vehicles. And for those, the driver really would be us creating our EV fleet. We currently do not have any EV vehicles unless they got one past me that I'm not aware of. But we are planning for a number of those in our green fleet policy. We're also, looking at where we need to be placing our power upgrades for the charging stations. And we've been talking with a number of the other communities in Pinellas County because of, this is a very dense county, as we all know, and the grid does not care about those boundaries in many situations. So we are trying to work with those other communities to find out where they need to put their infrastructure and where we need to put it so that we can provide that information to Duke Energy and they can create a grid that, that really works for all of us in our planned, EV conversions. We did have and have just recently canceled an order for 2 EV rear load vehicles. We canceled those because of some issues related to manufacturing. These were vehicles that had never been used before. They were basically pilot vehicles. A lot of issues as it relates to them trying to manufacture them and get something that will really work. When we saw where they were at, we made the decision that we just need to not take the chances and pay the high cost of these that have not been tested. So we're stepping away from that a little bit.
Are those trash trucks you're talking about?
Yeah, the rear load trash vehicles, yep.
Cancel that?
But there are some that we are also looking at that have been tested and are proven. I believe MAC is the one that is the best option. So we're not abandoning that. We just don't feel comfortable using those vehicles that have not been tested and they're struggling with right now. So we've sort of moved off of that and we're trying to focus in on something a little different that makes a little more sense for us, we believe. That is what I got.
Okay.
If you have any comments, I'm happy to
Thank you very much, Micah.
answer them.
I think it's great that we're finally receiving this, that it's been put together. I'd like to see, where all of these items are complete.
Yeah.
But, it sounds like we're quite a few years off from.
Yeah, and I've built into, when we get to the near-term items, I've got an update for you all planned further in the year where we can get you updated on some of these installations. So we're trying to build those things in so we're not missing them, right? And we're prepared for those conversations, and you all can expect this is when we're going to get this update. Same with Green Print, same with Ready for 100.
Any comments from the?
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's great. I find it very exciting. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm also happy to hear you talk about EV charging. Yesterday I struggled all over Largo it's hard to find an EV charging place, and when you look at the map on the app of all the available charging places, there's hardly anything in Clearwater, but there's things in Largo, things in St. Pete. So I'm really happy to hear about these plans.
Yeah, and hopefully I believe Melody identified, not to you all, but in an email to Mr. Beckman yesterday, that we're probably about a month out on our 5 EV chargers in the park. So that's exciting. We're hoping to get those online soon, and we'll see how it goes.
So there's 5 EV charging stations?
It's 5. Yep. It's 5. 6.
6. I thought there were 6.
It's even better.
And they're on piers? Or are they on Pierce?
The Pierce lot, yeah,
I was
right down
trying to find-
in the park, down the hill on Pierce.
Okay, so they're in the lot.
They will be. They're not there yet. We're striped for them.
Okay,
They just haven't been installed.
all right.
Who is going to manage them? Duke?
What's that?
Who's going to manage them? Green Lots?
Well, it's, our parking system will manage them.
No, I mean, usually there's a third party that you go on your app and then you connect to.
Blink is the,
Blink, okay.
is the vendor that we've used. Yeah, it's the same one that we've used in Garden. It seems like the app is getting a little better. We did have some struggles with it. Melody did a great job, holding them to the fire on trying to make some adjustments to that, and it seems to be improving.
Great.
I have a question about the fleet building. You said that you were anticipating 5% savings potential? Did you say 5%? Did I hear that correctly on the fleet building?
No, it's actually 85%
No, we're
on
talking.
solar. So solar, we hope to generate 85% of the power used.
Yes.
It's a very large roof. It houses fleet as well.
Where is it? Where is the fleet building?
It's on Hercules.
Near the waste?
What's that?
Near the transfer station there?
Yes, so it's not necessarily near the transfer station. It's on Hercules, right next to the air park.
Okay.
And it's
filling
just
station.
off of Hercules. It's not right on it.
Okay, I know where it is. I was thinking that was the transfer station. Okay.
All right, any other comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? Please come forward.
Thank you, Brian Beckman. I'm not sure if I caught it in your very long list, which was fantastic. So the new city hall, that is being planned, and that's planned to have solar as well, correct? I didn't know if you had that in your list.
So we haven't gotten to that stage. We have had conversation every step of the way with city admin about it, about having solar in it. As I think everybody knows, the City Hall project sort of derailed. We were about to get into the solar element when kind of the scope changed. Now that we're back on the path, yeah, we fully intend to have solar on that building. Yeah.
That's my main question.
Yeah.
Thank you. And EV chargers?
And EV chargers.
All right.
Well, let me back up. Most of the parking related to the building will be in MSB.
Okay.
So they would be in MSB.
All right,
The
great.
MSB garage. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments from the
The
audience?
fire station near the high school?
Yes, 47?
47. Is that in the works at all?
It is, yeah. They're in design now. They're looking at it. That's a pretty wooded area, so it's going to be a little harder to get the sunlight, from what I understand.
Okay.
But they have expressed to me, and we have a great advocate in engineering that is pushing for solar and different sustainability-related items on all of these projects. So, he's actually he informed me the other day that they've actually identified that they're going to put an induction oven in that building, or a range in that building, which
Really?
should replace a gas range that we typically have. So he's looking at a lot of different items.
I talk to engineering kind of regularly, and I was told that there's a new policy regarding a new structure that is requiring now that for any new construction, that there has to be an evaluation of natural gas. First, this is under natural gas.
Yeah. So historically, there was a policy that, in essence, required for solid waste and for gas, required any construction project, new construction project, for them to use our solid waste roll-offs rather than private roll-offs, and required us to not evaluate, but it put in gas.
Just put in gas.
Yeah.
So, that has been the go-to. That's been.
We have amended that so that instead of just blindly focused on putting in the gas, that we will look at, and that was done in 47, what makes sense in that facility. and not just gas, right, making assumptions about, hey, this is going to impact our bottom line, but what is the environmental impact, what is the financial impact, what can actually be placed into this building based on the footprint of the site, those sorts of things. So it added a layer of review so that we make sure that we're looking at these different things. That's what the new policy was.
So what that means is that for any new construction, there'll be, what I understand, there'll be, a hiring of a third party to evaluate, to look at the lifetime cost benefit of different gas systems versus other systems?
Yeah, so in some instances, they would use a third. It really depends on the complexity of the install.
Okay.
In some cases, it may be that we're able, as the Office of Innovation, to provide some feedback on those things. Sometimes it's the architect that is able to do it. It really just depends on the complexity of the installation. The fire stations can be a little more complex because of some of the requirements that they have, but at the end of the day, sometimes it comes down to whether or not the policy of the city is to require a certain level of appliance, commercial versus residential. That's a conversation that we've had and are having related to any facility, fire station, recreation center. Like, what's the need there? What's the expectation of city admin as it relates to those types of units? Because the costs are obviously very different for a gas versus induction versus electric on, when you move from residential to commercial. So we're evaluating all of that as well.
And looking at, for the lifetime,
Yeah.
looking at the lifetime cost and benefits.
All
I
right.
think that's a positive move.
All right. Any other no more comments from the board? No more comments from the audience? We'll move on to our next item, 4.4 EAB legislative priorities.
Yes, so I have added in the 2023 legislative priorities. I think we've talked in the past about wanting to get these to the clerk's office for Nicole's benefit, so that when we come forward to council in usually around October, they've got an idea of what the boards have an interest in. If there are items that on this sheet that we agree with or disagree with, or that aren't even on this, and this is last year's, right? So some of these are not an issue anymore, some of them are. But I just wanted to provide you something so you could see what we brought forward last year. But if there's anything the board is passionate about or that you would like to take a stance on, we will then communicate that to the city council and let you know when we're going to have a conversation about it. So if you want to send a representative, you certainly can.
All right.
You sent that as an attachment.
Mm-hmm.
I did, yeah.
Why am I so?
And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to pull it up.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly sent as an attachment, was it? It was just that we can click on the link and get to it.
It should be an attachment to the agenda item.
Yeah. Yeah, like what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not like we got an email that had all this stuff in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's part of the agenda.
It was a part of the
You have
agenda.
to go-
Oh, it was in the agenda.
You have to go find the
attachment.
agenda
Yeah.
and find the agenda where it has
Okay.
all the links and then go in and look at
Click
that.
on the items and then all the back.
But about this 2023 one, the sustainability and resilience, I like that. I hope it stays in the 2024. To what these folks were talking about earlier, some of these bullet points really address that, about to combat sea level rise, to have climate resilient infrastructure, wetlands preservation. All of that is really directly impacted by this proposed development that they brought to our attention.
What are you looking for us from this?
Any items that you all feel like,
From
the city
that you
council-
sent from there, or just
Yeah, whether
that we
it's
have in
this
mind?
or whether it's not even on here,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
just something that you feel council needs to be aware of as they go into legislative session.
Is this your office that develops this?
I'm sorry?
Is this your office that develops this?
No, actually, this is the clerk's office that develops it. It's all Nicole's work.
I'll say there's one. I guess there's something that I've noticed the last few years, and at a residential level, and now I'm seeing it from a commercial sales is artificial turf. And I think that in the past, this board has had presentations on it well before I was serving on this board, though. It was over a decade ago. But there's been a proliferation of the sales and use of artificial turf, and our city has impervious surface rules, and I wonder if there's a time now that we should find out more about the quality. A lot of these are made out of plastics. The lifespan of them, if they create other problems for neighbors, heat is one of them. I know that in city parks there is artificial turf in a few of them, and in the new one, the Coachman Park that was redeveloped. But I think it'd be interesting to find out where advances have been made and if this turf is something, because there are benefits to it, using less water and having a green yard, but I think that maybe we can find out more of the qualities for people. I've seen them sold at Lowe's now, so that's where I feel that we should maybe look into it as something within the city, because if homeowners can go out and roll this onto their yards, it could become an issue for other neighbors and throughout the city. So
Sounds like an environmental study.
yeah.
I think, we never know quite what we're going to be hit with in a legislative session, but there's been a proliferation of preemption bills that have affected municipalities, and in terms of being able to regulate for environmental protections, I think. Also for some of the goals in Greenprint. Last year, I think we did, this didn't happen, but the year before, there was a huge bill. It was finally, I can't remember what it was, 743 or something like that, whereby net metering was going to be eliminated over time. And that would have had a tremendous impact on our solar industry here in Florida, which is like the second in the country or third in the country, largest state with solar production. And I'm not, that would be something that's some of the kind of thing that I think the city should be watching for. And to my knowledge, that was not on their radar at all. That bill was, I think would have direct impact on Greenprint goals and on, anybody who's got solar. There was a lot of talk. I was in Tallahassee talking about that to our legislators. With our goals, our energy goals, there are preemption bills that we should be keeping an eye on.
Yep. Agreed.
741, I think was what it was in 2020. It had the whole solar industry and all the environmental groups, fighting it. And it was just, at the last minute, it was vetoed by the governor, which was amazing. But it would have very much impacted all of us who have solar, and anyone who's considering it.
All right. Any other?
Yeah.
John?
Several years ago, we did have a tour of the Cooper's Bayou property that really is not accessible to the public at this time. And I think there's probably federal, state funding for, conservation lands, and it's not clear, what the management plan for that property is. I know there were some early discussions about connecting the end of the northern end of the peninsula over to the other roadway and park on it was crossing that one waterway. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the Cooper's Bayou Pond, I guess, or park. But it just, to me, it's such a unique piece of land in the city of Clearwater's portfolio of land that the public doesn't have access to. and it is a phenomenal piece of property. I think the potential for environmental education there, there should be funds available, and that the city staff work to see what we can do to bring that project to fruition and achieve public access.
And we will, at least as far as I know from engineering, we will be having some engineering data, I believe 30%, at our October EAB meeting. So we'll get a preview of what the early engineering looks like for Cooper's Bayou. But point well taken on the funding, which we do not have anything allocated to right now. We definitely need to look at that from a grant perspective.
All right, anything else? All right, we'll move on to our, anything from the audience, please step forward. Thank you.
You're so kind, Ryan Beckman. I don't know if this fits into state legislative priorities, but we as Sierra Club are paying attention to St. Petersburg. They're been considering a new ordinance, as I've seen it, similar to Largo's, on allocating so many EV-related spaces, depending upon the type and size of construction. So I believe that's going through their HERS committee. I would ask you as a board to consider discussing that or paying attention to that as that goes forward. Again, Largo already has an ordinance in place. I expect St. Petersburg will have one. We'll see what it finally looks like. And so there might be some good examples to look to. Thank you.
Brian, are those spaces or chargers?
Can be both. There's different items that they include in the ordinance. Could be different it is usually different capabilities that are included, various capabilities, like is it EV capable, is it EV ready, and do they actually have charging stations there?
You're talking about new construction, or?
That's what I think they mainly are considering. I think that's what Largo has. Again, I'm not firsthand there at those meetings and paying attention to the details down in St. Petersburg nowadays. I wouldn't be surprised that they might have a little bit more than what Largo currently has by the time they get done with it, but I don't know.
They're looking at any new construction that has 20 parking spots or more to have, and I'm trying to think what at least two EV charging. It may be a percentage of whatever the number of parking places there are.
I would expect it to be a percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah, with certain thresholds.
Yeah, so it would be like 10%. I think they're considering that in St. Pete right now.
Yeah, that's what Brian was saying in
Yeah.
Largo and St. Pete.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. The charger side, I think, would be something that we should look at. As far as EV spaces in general, I think ultimately we're moving toward all EVs in terms of what people will be driving. So ultimately, all spaces will be EV spaces at one point in the future, right? But will we have enough chargers in the parking lots for those cars, right? So we can, if that's something we can find out some more information about what's happening regionally here and how our board can kind of help those discussions for our city as well.
Well, when that happens, people are going to make decisions about where they want to live and where they want to go for their leisure activities based on what, if there are EV stations there. To some degree, people charge at home, but, when people are coming from a distance especially.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about apartment buildings or condos or whatever, then charging at home is, that's important to whether you choose to buy there or live there.
All right.
So it sounds like, as far as the state and federal legislative priorities, the desire is to focus on the preemption of local control on a number of items, the net metering and continuing to support retaining that system, and looking at some funding for instance, the Cooper's Bayou project. From a land development code perspective, we would want some additional information on the EV spaces and requiring them in certain types of development, and looking at the impacts of artificial turf and whether we should or should not allow them in the future. Am I got that generally correct?
I think that wraps up, yeah, that's,
Yeah, I will find out when the code amendments, when the next round is, and my thought is, whatever date that is, we'll try to have at least 2 meetings prior to that date, so you get a chance to review it, and then give them some recommendations based on your various comments.
I think that's great. Thank you.
I think any pre-exemptions that, pre-exemptions that, laws that are bills that would hamper our green print goals, would be a way to put it. The net metering one was one pronounced one, but it's coming from a lot of different directions.
Yep.
Building regulations, everything.
All right, and Marita?
I have one more. I'll try so quickly, being mindful of time. Something Bill Johnson referred to earlier, the coastal conservation line.
Yeah.
Some sort of regulation of that, oversight of that. There's a proposal at North El Dorado that it be waived so that a guy could build his pool over the coastal conservation line. And the coastal conservation line, to my understanding, is environmental protection for the water for all of us. But it's also my understanding that nobody really patrols this, and it's just brought before the council or whoever, whatever regulatory board. So some sort of oversight of the coastal conservation line, strict requirements that people adhere to it, that somebody's paying attention to it.
Florida DEP.
Yeah, but I think they have to be called.
They do.
Yeah.
It happens.
That was heard yesterday in the Community Development Board, and the determination, as I understand it, was that they're not going to be allowed to build a pool, but they will have a fence for the area that will be, but it will be it's like a picket fence, and so they're allowing a picket fence to breach that, the conservation, the coastal, line, but the pool won't be allowed there.
Yeah, historically, and Micah, you might know more about this informationally, the city and the state have gone back and forth about who oversees the CCL a lot throughout the city. I think there's been homeowners that have tried to sue the city in the past, and there's been lawsuits between the city, the state, and homeowners. So I think that's why there is such a, I guess it's kind of a free-for-all there to a certain extent in terms of development and construction on the beach and some of those parcels. Is that?
We can still, we can try to include something that, that includes more regulation and oversight of that line, or clarification of jurisdiction, something like that.
Because it seems to be a case-by-case basis as it is right now.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next item then, 4.5, the fiscal year 2024 budget. Thanks, I did watch some of that presentation at the work session. It's a lot more money coming in.
Yep.
Same millage.
So what I've tried to provide is just, and I know this is our first year really delving into this, and it's very late in the process for the budget. But as we move forward, and one of the reasons I want to have, the budget director, Caitlin Castle, join us at some point here is to find out where the best spot is for, from a timing perspective, for her and the city to get comments about, budgetary priorities that the board might have. Hopeful to have her in October, as she ends this budget season and begins to relax, and then ramps up like a month later to delve into next year. But I provided you a couple items just to, put stuff on your radar.
Couple items?
What's
Sorry,
that?
you said
a couple items. A couple items, yes. One of them is the
some
org
light
chart.
reading.
One's the org chart, just to give you a sense of what our organizational chart looks like today. Not anything necessarily action-wise that needs to be taken, more informational than anything else. The second item that I've got here attached is some of our FTE changes, so you can kind of see some of the changes that are occurring and the reasons for them, which they've tried to spell out as best as possible, in what different areas they're impacting. So again, just informational, and certainly if you have any thoughts on any of these, happy to hear.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Go right ahead.
I thought you were Office of Innovation.
Yes.
Oh, that's all, but,
Yep, we are the Office of Innovation. It's off to the side there with the two assistant city managers. Yep, on the left.
aren't you also Assistant City Manager?
What's that?
Aren't you also Assistant City Manager?
No, I left that role.
Oh,
Mr. Jennings created this sort of lateral position of Chief Innovation Officer, so that became its own thing.
I wanted to say thank you for sharing the information. There was also the 55 some odd pages of the budget info, and what I gleaned from reading through there to share was that it was I liked a lot of the forward-thinking aspects to it in terms of looking to retrofit HVAC systems here and there and other things that cost money, but look to do that can ultimately save money. And I think that not everything within all those pages really falls within what we would do, but I think there are a lot of aspects that kind of Venn diagram into what we would have an interest in. So
Yeah, and one of the reasons we wanted to provide all of the capital items, and that's the 6 year, those are really the best things probably to affect, is because, y'all have, y'all are different people, you have your different perspectives, and, sometimes we, from the staff perspective, get locked into, what we normally see in a budget and what we normally think about in a budget, and you all may be thinking about something totally different that we don't understand. So, if you do see anything and make a connection that we can't make or don't make, I think there's a lot of benefit there.
Well, in terms of that, the only thing, and it's a bit outside of our purview, but it was something I noticed in the FTE aspect, and it was something that I had heard from in the community, was just about library hours and not having staff to work there, and I didn't see any changes there as far as that, and departmentally it didn't look like they were on there, and I know that's not our board or anything, but since you brought it up, I just wanted to share that that's one of the things that I noticed on there. I don't know if that's
There were
right
a couple library hour changes that were made in this fiscal year that aren't necessarily reflected on this sheet, but where we extended hours, I believe, at North Greenwood. I believe there's Sundays now. They've actually got some utilization.
I know there's other libraries that they cut hours, and that's why I was interested. Or like I said, when I saw the FTE addition, some deletion, it was just kind of, I didn't notice anything about the library system in there.
So let me try to pull out and I'll send out the information related to last year when they discussed it, and what changes we may have made during the year, so at least you can see that, because I don't think it's reflected anywhere necessarily, at least that information is understood.
But it was a lot of great information. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other comments from the board? Anyone from the audience? All right, we'll move on to our next item. 4.6, review near-term items with the EAB.
Yes, you got ahead of me there. So I've identified, again, as I mentioned earlier, for our next few meetings, just so we can try to get a good cadence and a rhythm for the next meetings, and you all know what to expect. And we can obviously adjust these, because I know sometimes, people are away, people have other things going on in their life. So if we ever need to move any of these, that's not necessarily an issue. In October, we're planning on bringing forward, Sarah should be here with the Cooper's Bayou early design. So we'll be sharing that with you. The fee-bait green fund conversation that we mentioned earlier, and some conversation with the budget director. We're planning on having some conversation about that. The herbicides and pesticides, we weren't able to we'd originally planned on trying to do that today. We weren't able to get the information, all the information, either internally or with the county yet, so we bumped it back a little bit so we can try to meet everything with that. I think, frankly, the majority of the issues related to that really were related to the park and overall staff capacity. That's really what pushed us back. An update on recycling. We're going to have some recycling updates in August for the city council.
Okay. Yeah, I thought we were supposed to have that this.
Yep. And I think we've come to some early agreement and begun to draft a contract with one of the recycling entities, so we'll be able to report out on that and about the refund stuff as well. And then I've spoken to Parks and Recreation about the master plan. You may see some public information opportunities out there. I have included for our October meeting, them coming with their consultant to provide an update to you all before it gets too far down the road and you can't make any amendments to it, or it's more difficult to at the very least. So we are trying to make sure that we're building that into your general work plan. Moving into January, we think that that's when the best opportunity for talking about budget probably is. We'll talk more with Kayleen about it. But
Before we get to January, the trees, I thought we were going to have trees at this meeting as well.
I've forgotten the trees, and that you are correct.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean
I will add that in as the October. I know that Public Works is currently working on that ordinance that we discussed in, I think, May.
Yeah.
It was May.
Okay. Yeah, I just heard that they were supposed to be ready in July and then present to
Yep, and it's not ready.
Okay.
It's not ready right now. All right. So we'll get it together and bring it forward for October. I will add that to the list.
I have some, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I wasn't here, I was out of the country at the May meeting when the presentation was on the tree plan. And I just was wondering do we know what priorities? They asked us for priorities. And I don't know, did they get priorities from us? And, and I certainly have an interest in seeing our tree canopy maintained as it is into the future, rather than, and I thought I heard, I was trying to listen to it everywhere on my TV, on my computer, just so I could hear. It was sort of hard to hear the video. But I thought I heard maybe from our arborist in Parks and Rec that there's not the resources, there's not staff and resources to maintain our tree canopy as it is. I don't know if I heard that correctly.
I think that's true. With the number of trees we have, we're under-resourced.
We're under-resourced.
If you want to keep it to keep the canopy to the level it is and the level of service to the level that we've expressed we want it, there's likely not enough resources currently. And I think we're going to have to determine what those things are and adjust those resources appropriately. I think that's what probably makes sense. We got some priorities, if I remember correctly, emailed post-meeting. I'll have to dig back through those and can certainly kind of make a master list and identify it for everyone.
Yeah, and that's what Chuck asked for, if there was any insight from the board to provide it to him, and he would implement that.
Could I add one to that? How do I do that?
Absolutely. You can email them to me if you'd like.
Okay.
And
because that would be my priority, is to maintain our tree canopy as it is. I would be, as somebody as my HOA president in my neighborhood, we have some incredible, primarily oak trees in a lot of the right-of-way. And some of the suggestions that they made that would take changes in the infrastructure, sidewalk, that kind of thing. I think considering the heat that's coming with climate change in this area, that we're seeing it, we're already seeing it this summer with record-breaking heat day after day after day, and I think we're looking at the future. And so, keeping our communities cool, and that's just one reason to maintain the tree canopy. I hate to imagine those trees not being replaced in my neighborhood, and I know people buy and want to live in neighborhoods that have the kind of tree canopy that my neighborhood in Morningside has. I think and so anyway, there are so many reasons they were given by Chuck, at our last meeting. But I don't know. One question that we didn't ask was, what would it take? What kind of changes? Because I know there've been cuts in that department.
We're going to have a presentation in October about this, and that'll be a more
It'll be
appropriate time to
written
talk
by
about
then. the plan will be made.
Send in your comments to Chuck, and he will put that in
Okay.
together, and we'll be able to comment on it
All right.
at the meeting in October and before it goes to city council. And that'll be when we'll have this, a wider discussion on the tree issue. Micah, any other for January?
Just on the final couple that we have, we're planning on doing a green print implementation update and a Ready for 100 update in January, so that we kind of make sure that you understand where we're at on those approaches. And then in April, an update on some of our solar installations based on our, what we believe the timing is for those installs. And then in July, right now we have revisiting again the legislative priorities for 2025 and also looking at the synergistic year 2 numbers. Another item I have not included, but we'll find a date on and make some adjustments based on is when some of those code amendments post-comprehensive plan need to be made so that we can get ahead of that. When I get that information, I'll add it into this list as well.
Wow, thank you. I think the only other thing, I guess I don't know if it would be near term. It's near term, but it wouldn't be as much as a presentation in terms. But in October, I guess we'll have to decide then when we give our presentation to City Council. It's usually November, sometimes it's December.
I think you usually do it in November, yeah.
We did it last year in November as kind of the first time. We've done it previously, it was later, but I think November's a good time too. So if that's something just to think about for everyone on the board and for for October, but that's getting that on the agenda for the next whatever.
So a conversation about what the presentation, the content of the presentation. Got it. Understood.
It's usually pretty simple. It's what we did for the last 10 months or so, but yeah.
When do we meet in October?
I
believe it is
should be the third
October
Wednesday. I think it's the 18th.
18th.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I have it. Thanks.
All right. All right. Any other comments from the board about near-term items? Any comments from the audience? Please come forward. No? All right. Thank you for putting that together. We'll move on to our next item, old business. Do we have anything?
I think we've covered everything.
Micah, anything from you?
I have nothing.
John?
No.
Glenna?
No.
Old business. I had some stuff I was going to maybe mention during my, let me see here, as far as old business. Well, you had mentioned the Cooper's Point, but I had asked last time about the light pollution there. Is that, do we have any update or anything, any info about that?
We don't have anything at this point from them. Let me make another note here on the light pollution.
All right.
Apologies for that.
Yeah, I don't know if you were at that meeting, but I had mentioned that, driving over Bayside Bridge, you could just see all the light from the school that's right in front of Cooper's Point. There's eagle's nest there. There's other wildlife that live back there. So I'd like to find out what we can do to reduce that light. And then, let me see. We talked about Lake Bellevue as well and Cooper's Bayou as far as like field trip meetings. We just talked about essentially our last meeting, right, October. Do we have any plans to do those other meetings that we've done in the past? And they were kind of supplementary meetings, but like adding Cooper's Bayou to the legislative priorities. I don't know if there's a time that we could go out there and do another updated walk around.
Might be good after we get the presentation from Sarah at the October meeting and go out afterwards and see what it looks like on the ground.
Yeah, certainly. And then also, we had that presentation from Lake Bellevue over 2 years ago, I think now, and there was a water management plan that was crafted, and I think it'd be good if we could go out there and see how things are as well. So if we can figure out how to put those, I guess that's old business, but if it's going to fit into near-term items or whatever.
The Cooper's one first in maybe like November, and then something after that when it's a little cooler for Lake Bellevue? Okay.
Yeah, certainly. It could be in the following year, February or something like that. Yeah. All right, and then sorry. Oh, yeah. At our last meeting also, Sarah had mentioned there was an update for Stevenson Creek. There was a management plan that was just going to be updated in the next couple of months. So I guess maybe that'll be something
Yeah, when we get a timeline on that, I'll add
Okay.
that to the near-term issues as well, and make sure we get it on.
Okay. Okay, well, those were the only items that I had. Then we'll move on to our next item, Director's Report.
I have nothing.
Okay, all right. Item 7, board members to be heard. Marita?
A couple of things. First of all, this is a very meaty agenda, so I want to say thank you very much. I find it very meaningful. And also thank you for staying late. I know we're supposed to be out of here by 6. I know this is cutting into your personal time, so thank you for supporting us and staying late. I have one other item. Maybe I should have brought it up earlier, but there is a Tampa Bay Wisewater Regional Rebate Program for residential. There are residential rebates for shallow wells, toilets, and smart irrigation controls. It's my understanding Clearwater does not participate in that, and I'm hoping that Clearwater can look at participating in that and support for that. And I had a bunch of other things, but we covered it all.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Glenna?
Yeah, I think I covered everything I had. The solar is up in Coachman Park. I don't know if it was mentioned, but it's online now, as I understand it. 133 solar panels. So it's an occasion for celebration. It's our first.
John?
I'm all set.
Okay. I had only a couple items outside of that. The city has a survey. Micah kind of mentioned it too for the master plan. Make sure to take it if you haven't taken it already to help encourage more. I've taken it. There's also 3 live in-person meetings, the 24th at the North Greenwood Rec Center, the 25th at the Long Center, and the 26th at the main library. And there are a couple of cleanups coming up, one this weekend at Stevenson Creek, if you want to help clean up the creek there. My neighborhood has a cleanup the next week at State Street Park, if you want to come out there and help us clean up the park. I did want to say that I was at the opening for Coachman Park, and I've been there subsequently as well. So if you weren't there for the opening, come out and check it out. It's nice at night and during the day too. One thing that I have heard is it could use some more shade structures out there. So
Nice at night.
But
It's pretty at night.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of people out there using it, so it's working out pretty well so far, it looks like. And then the only other thing, and we talked about it a little bit here and there, was how we meet quarterly, and we did have a lot of stuff on this agenda. We do have the flexibility. If we ever do need to meet more frequently, we can. So if there is a need for increased meeting, how can we make sure that is something that we can do, that we can schedule, so that we don't have meetings that are too long at one meeting and maybe not long enough at another. But
Yeah, no, certainly we can sort of preemptively look at the agenda. That October agenda obviously is not small.
yeah.
If you'd like us to look at some dates with the clerk's office to see what's available, we can certainly see if we can get another one in there.
Yeah, if there's an opportunity, I guess between, I guess we'd have August and.
I won't be here in October, so I'd appreciate another meeting.
Okay.
So were we looking at September? I mean, we should probably know if people are.
Yeah.
Are you?
Well, why don't you find out
You
what
want to
dates
check
are
some
available?
dates?
Yeah.
We'll take a look and send something over.
Yeah, and like I said, we had talked about a couple other field trip meetings, which are different than meeting here in our normal quarters, but also those are, again, additional meetings where we do get some business done. But outside of that, like I said, I just wanted to, make sure that we know that if we do need to meet more, we can. And we have, earlier this year, we had a couple of additional meetings to kind of meet and get things done that we needed to get done. Anyhow, outside of that,
I'd like us to plan that a little, sooner rather than later, just because, people make plans, vacation plans, trips, stuff like that, and so.
Plan what?
Or a special meeting.
Oh, yeah, certainly. It would
Yeah.
definly be well in
I
advance.
had to miss
Yeah,
a couple because I planned something 9 months before.
Yeah.
I know it's hard,
So we meet so infrequently that I think we should meet more frequently because for all those reasons.
Yeah, I agree. And we asked for that last year. Was it last year or the year before?
Both,
Okay.
and I think
So we
before
keep
that.
asking to meet more frequently.
And and that's where we got our field trip, our additional, our two
That's
other
true.
meetings.
Field
We
trip
added two
ideas.
other meetings in, and then we've met, I think, 5 or 6 times so far this year.
Right. I think we should have real meetings every other month. That's me. My 2 cents.
Okay.
Me too.
Can we look into how that would?
I'll take a look and see what,
Yeah.
I mean, Nicole, do you want to do that, or do you want to do monthly?
I think every other month is,
Messing with Nicole.
yeah.
Really,
All right.
are you on board with this? Awesome.
Oh, very well. All right, so then we'll have some more information about how we can
Yep, we'll put
increase the
something together.
frequency
Yeah.
then. All right, great. With that, we'll end at 6:20. Thank you.